Oh, there we go. We're start recording. Hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Stuart. I am a head of accounting here at ApprovalMax, and today I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we are using ApprovalMax from our own perspective. So there's going to be a little bit of a demo. There's going to be a bit of a work through, but I wanted to talk it from a finance function and how we can implement this and grow this through. And we've just got some slides coming on. There we go. So yeah, so adding value to clients, making a difference ultimately. And that's twofold of adding value to clients, but also to ourselves as an accounting practice as well from our perspective. So if we just go to the next slide. So yeah, so like I say, I'm Stuart, head of accounting at ApprovalMax. I'm also founder at Cloud 10 Accounting, so I run my own practice. We've scaled very quickly, and in terms of outsourced finance function and bringing in ApprovalMax, it's been a key part of what we do, really, and indeed the firm before it that I worked at. I also run another company that specializes purely in conversions and moving some really chunky sized clients over to the cloud. So one of the myths to bust pretty early on is that the belief that kind of the zero, the QBO with ApprovalMax is just for smaller businesses that do a couple of million is like what I'm going to talk about today. This can be scaled to multi-million pounds of companies, which I'll touch on shortly. Okay, so next slide. That's enough about me. So I'm just going to talk about why we use ApprovalMax, the type of clients in a bit more detail, and then we'll get really into the meat of the presentation where we'll just start demoing things. And then, life isn't always easy. There are always hurdles in these setups. There are always things to think about, particularly if this is your first time to the world of ApprovalMax or using it or setting it up. So just hopefully you can learn from some of my mistakes or difficult periods, what those common hurdles are. And then we've got a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. So if we go on to why use ApprovalMax. So ApprovalMax, started life really as the purchase orders, a bill approval piece of software, and it still does that fantastically well. But the reality is, like, it has evolved somewhat now, and is a much more sophisticated piece of software. So it's not just about an approval process for matching items, but it's given us complete financial control. And it's got more and more sophisticated as time has gone on. So we can do all sorts of things, as I'll show you later, in terms of who approves what invoices at certain levels in certain departments. So really, really robust in the way we can set it up. Much more so than any of the other apps that offer kind of approval software alongside it. Like, this is very much its main bread and butter. Time-wise, it's great that you can put some auto approvers in there on certain levels. There's very sophisticated ways that we can use decision makers in there, and just keep things slick. Like, so often people think that this kind of stuff makes things more difficult or slows businesses down. If it's implemented properly, it can make buying decisions and spending decisions actually really quicker, and also take away from the bottleneck of the one person being in charge of kind of major spending decisions or directions. And from the accounting side of things as well, in the accounting profession, trying to run outsourced finance functions before this was particularly difficult. Again, it would rest often on one person's shoulders in that firm to carry the can for that finance function, and that's not the case with ApprovalMax, because we can spread that load. And then we've got the financial control, so everything is documented and approved in there, and we have great audit trails. So in some of the other cloud softwares, truth be told, the audit trail isn't always as hot as it could be. And one of the biggest negatives from moving to cloud sometimes from old desktop is, well, I feel like I've lost my audit trail, or it's not as visible. That is not the case with ApprovalMax, where every transaction, every change, even to workflows, is all monitored. It's in there. And it's potentially, we can go completely paperless, obviously, as well on there. So that covers that. And then again, just in terms of, real pain points, the big one is the data errors and inconsistencies when manually entering data. And the reality is that, humans make considerably more mistakes when left to their own devices than when the machine's doing a processing. So when things are set up properly and working, like the consistency and controls are truly phenomenal in there. Payment wise, if you're making payments, particularly for your clients as an accountant, this kind of process is absolutely huge to making sure that payment runs run smoothly and on time every single time, which again is another great feature. And the stats there show that within 2 hours, 50% of bills are approved and paid in ApprovalMax. Chasing decision makers, again, how difficult is it when you are waiting on one person to make a decision? And as I'll show you later, not only can we approve from anywhere, we've got mobile apps, we've got Slack and email, so we've got multiple channels from which to approve. We can also bring in substitute people. So again, if someone is out of office or on holiday, like, it doesn't mean that everything stops and slows down until that person returns. And again, that's quite a really cool feature in ApprovalMax. Visibility wise, absolute full visibility. As again, well, when we get to the demo, you will see in much more detail what that looks like. But that can be difficult as a business owner or indeed running a practice to know, just as a snapshot, where things are up to, where are the bottlenecks, where are the snags, where are the decisions that are being slowed down. And that's all visible through ApprovalMax. It's really, really easy to see what's sitting where and with who. And again, we touched on the audit there, the audit trail and reports. And not only for kind of who is approving what, but workflows, the actual mapping of a workflow. If someone takes an approver out or changes something, we've got complete clarity on that. So for those companies that are audited or auditors listening to this call, like, that is an incredibly powerful feature that can make a real difference to process mapping when you go on audits, or indeed auditors come to town. And then in terms of access to the data, ApprovalMax has got multiple levels. And again, some criticisms of some of the cloud softwares by default are there aren't many user levels. Like, you've got access to the bank or you haven't, and there's not much in between. ApprovalMax lets people see what they need to see on that side of things, and not get see anything sensitive, or indeed just get bogged down in other detail that they don't need to see. So lots of great reasons to use it. So that's why we'd use ApprovalMax. And then clients that we use it for. So like I said at the start, I now run a company that does huge Xero integrations. So we're talking multinational, multi-entity companies. These turn over anywhere from £5 million to £150 million plus. So the belief that kind of the Xero, the QuickBooks, the cloud initiative can't compete with the likes of the Oracles and SAPs of this world is in a lot of instances not true. Like, with a really nice ecosystem built around it, you can scale this to huge levels. So ApprovalMax fits great from the smaller turnovers right up to the multinationals. So that would be top of my list, and the first probably myth to really bust that this is just for the up to 5 million turnover companies. It goes way, way beyond that. And then construction companies are one of our niches. They are a really great one because, again, traditionally lots of their stuff can be manual. How painful is it as an accountant trying to match invoices to supplier statements? Has it been received? Has it not been received? Were the goods the right amount? Did they all get received on site? Did some go direct to site? Did some, go to stock warehouses? They can be really, really messy. So I think in terms of impact, construction companies can certainly benefit the most with ApprovalMax. And then in addition to that, those that have inventory and stock holdings, ApprovalMax also works really, really well with Sin7, which is an absolute beast, for want of a technical term, of a stock system. And the integration with ApprovalMax is really, really cute, so that we can manage all our stock in Sin7 on the ins and outs, but the approval process then sits with ApprovalMax, and it's that nice extra layer of security around it. And we can, it links so well with things like reorder levels and when things need to get bought. Again, in it, because it gives you that great oversight, it's a nice place to see how the business is performing across the board and what needs ordering. And then the final one, which I'm probably going to focus on over the course of the demo, really, is any outsourced finance offering that I offer. And, smaller end, that can be companies doing 200, 250K turnover a handful of staff, like where if we are getting involved with purchase orders, bills, supplier payments, running some numbers, doing the bookkeeping, running decks potentially, if we are doing any of those items, then even if the client doesn't see it, it can be really, really useful to use ApprovalMax in the background just for us, because what happens too much of the time is when we do outsource finance function, a common error when I first set up was it was so reliant on one person in that firm. And what if that person left? What if that person was sick? What if that person, in terms of promotions and working through the firm, wants to do different things and move up, but they are then tied to this client, and it made it really, really difficult to move that on. Whereas using ApprovalMax means not only can you make workflows for your clients, but you can make custom workflows just to manage the processes for how you run the outsourced finance function. And that for me is kind of absolutely huge. So they're the types of clients that we use it for. I mean, there's lots of things in between that, don't get me wrong, but those ones would be my top 4 if you're thinking about using ApprovalMax. If you've got any of those items, then you want to be looking at that. Okay, so enough of me whittering on. Now it's time to get into a demo. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit about how it works, what the flows look like, and again, I'm going to do it from an outsourced finance general perspective. So you can kind of see why it's important to us and how we set it up. So I will share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that okay now. Let me just move my little thing out of the way. Screen share. Okay, so this is ApprovalMax in a nutshell here. So left-hand side, we've got all the functionality. For purchase orders, bills, batch payments, which we'll come to, credit notes. So this section is all our doing section, if you like, of all the things that will have an approval process. So all these things on this left-hand side here below this line, they are all our types of approval processes that we have. And these are the out-of-the-box ones, but then we've also got custom ones here. I've just made a new workflow one, which I'll come to later, where we can make our own flows as well. So this list can get bigger, and indeed in our own practice there are quite a few manual customized workflows that then sit onto this. Now, and in terms of what I see, I have got the administration rights on this logon, so I can see all this kind of stuff. I've got some other logons here that we'll dive into where I can't see the same amount of stuff because I don't have access to some of those workflows and some of those processes. So I've got a couple of users that I'm going to dive into and reviewers. So in this instance, we can't see anything on this login. We've just got the review process. So I'll show you how that works from view to view. But the one I'm going to spend most of my time in is this one with everything. So here's all our process and flows. We've then got the nuts and bolts of reporting, budgets, and the actual settings down here, which we'll come to. And then up here, we've got things that I need to do. So as the master user, I can see all requests and what's that where. But then I've got things that I need to do and take my decision as well. So that's a very, very brief overview of kind of the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side is our active page. So depending on what we're looking at is what we see on this side. The first thing I want to mention, though, is I mentioned, right at the start, multinationals, multi-companies, it's great for them as number one. This is where if I've got more than one company, I can flick between organizations pretty seamlessly. So it's really nice, just flick from one to the other, straight in, straight out. Jobs are good, and we don't need to do different kind of logins, ins and outs. Once we're in one, we can flick from one to the other there really, really nicely and see them accordingly. So that's our first point of call. In terms of setting it up and integrations, so this one is connected now to Xero in terms of settings, but there's a stack of software that it can work with. So QuickBooks, Sin7, again, are two of the major ones that I work with and have fed it to. But it is capable of plugging into other systems as well and running standalone workflows as well outside of your core cloud accounting software as well. But in terms of where I would start with this, it is this workflows and settings and approvals here and approval workflows. So these are our main flows that exist out of the box. So we've got purchase orders, bills, credit notes, batch payments, zero batch workflows, Airwallex to make payments. And then on the sales side, we can do invoicing, credit notes, quotes. And then we've got the creating contacts and the manual journals as well. By default, they're not all on. You can see they're not active. So we've not switched this on. Nothing, you're not going to be able to see anything. Although it's on this side, this sales invoices, you can see it's not active. So it's not in use. These active ones are live. So these ones all have items here that we can use. So when I'm starting, I'm thinking about my main two, the bread and butter are my purchase orders and my bill workflow. And these are the two where if I'm setting this up as an outsourced finance function where I'm thinking about how we're going to start. So I'm going to show you what a workflow looks like. So this are each of the steps that are involved in getting a purchase order authorized effectively. And again, there are a few ways we can do that. So we can pull things directly from Xero, or we can create them in ApprovalMax directly. Now, I always like trying to make ApprovalMax the hub. I'm not a fan of doing things outside of ApprovalMax when this is the software that manages that. So my recommendation will be always to create in ApprovalMax. And that's the control process. If people do things outside of that, I'll show you some reports later where we can flag where there are breaches or people are trying to get around the system, so to speak. So we'll show you what that looks like. And again, we can choose. So I've got a Dave Smith and a Pete Gass here, as well as some other examples of who can create them. But at the moment, it's me that can submit them and contact them. And then we've got review step, approval step, and auto approval, sorry, and then different stage of approval. So I'm going to come back to review and auto approval in a minute because I've added those separately. The out of the box one is we'd create the PO and then someone needs to approve it. And this is where we can get quite sophisticated. So we can do a direct approval. So in this example, Dave Smith is just can approve everything. And again, for small companies, you'll often have that one person is the approver or direct line manage, and they get everything coming to them. However, we can get more sophisticated than that. So number one, we can add approvers for starters, but we've got this little matrix button here where we can start doing lots of weird and wonderful things. And this is where, when you first set up ApprovalMax, this is where we want to spend the time with the client to make sure that we've got the right people approving the right things at the right levels, because I'll come to hurdles in more detail later, but where this can go wrong very early on is that the wrong people are getting approvals, or that one person is getting absolutely battered with everything that comes in, and the steps are then wrong, and then we get resistance to it. It's not working the way we want it to do. This process isn't working. It feels more painful than it should be. So when we start an outsourced finance function, before we even start clicking these things, I would always recommend, whether it's on an Excel spreadsheet, lucid charts, or a good old pen and paper, document what the client or what you are doing in your industry, what your process is right now, and what that looks like. And then the question is, this is a great opportunity to refine things and change things as we bring softwares in, because I've worked with loads of firms where traditionally it's paper that's coming in and someone's literally signing it, sticking a stamp on it, and then putting it in someone's in tray. This is our chance to completely break that mold and change things up. So map out the existing process, the existing people, and indeed the existing pain points. And like I say, whether that's jot it down on paper or lucid charts or anything fancy, get that down first. And then we want to be, the consultation on this, if you like, is, do we want to replicate that? Or is this an opportunity to change things up and make things more sophisticated? Because in the days of paper, it's a bit harder to go, okay, if it relates to this or it's a certain value, it's got to go to this person. There is more human thought required in doing that than if the machines are taking control of it. So there might be things where, we've got like tracking categories in Xero. In this example, we've got different properties. We can set things up so that certain property spend goes to certain people. That might be harder to do on the old paper-based system, for example. So before we even start this, map out what the system looks like and map out what we want it to look like going forward. Who is it that needs to approve things? And that is where we start with. Too many people kind of just dive into this, set Dave as an approval, and off you go. And I guarantee that's going to cause you pain in the future if you do it that way. So properly sit down. And then again, we can then start going through this. So it might be that actually Pete Gath does anything under a certain amount or over a certain amount, for example. So anything under £1,000 can be done by him. And actually, he's not going to approve everyone's. That will just be if it comes from a certain person. So if it comes from Stuart, that'll be he'll get those. So again, we can do all types of sophisticated things. And then even in terms of suppliers. So again, I often find when I put this into places, people don't think about this. They skip this bit of, oh, well, we've never done it before, so why should we do it again? But this is a great opportunity to really control what suppliers we are spending money with and approve supplier lists. We can move into that realm. So we can then get approvals if suppliers are matching or indeed does not match a key list of suppliers, which can be really, really useful. So if something is out of the norm of our supplier list, this does not equal, is a great way here of making sure we're using key suppliers. And if not, someone higher up is getting informed about it. So a great little thing to think about there on that front. And then we've got the tracking categories. So these two tracking categories are pulling from the demo company in Xero right now. But again, we've got different types of property. One of them is close to my address. We've got those properties, and then so we can assign it for those as well. Or indeed, if it's not got a property assigned to it, again, is really, really useful as well. So have a little think about these. And then again, finally, we can allocate things to certain nominal codes. So if we've got heads of marketing, head of operations, heads of finances, they might have different things that they approve in different levels. So we can do that accordingly there as well. So I'm laboring this point a bit, but I can't stress enough, like this is the most important place to spend your time and map out. And when things go wrong with ApprovalMax, it's not the machine, it's because nowhere near enough time has been spent getting this bit right and getting it to work. So the other thing is, from an accounting perspective, so many accountants go, oh, I'm putting ApprovalMax in, that's the software cost, right? We'll do it. Like, this is a chance to move into the realm of advisory and consultancy and get paid for that. Like, this is valuable mapping. So we would do a proof of concept before we even went live with it that would be between anywhere from £250 to a couple of £1,000 on the real big ones of, is this going to work and what this going to look like? And sometimes that would be involved, this part of this would be involved in that proof of concept of what is this going to look like and how is it going to work before we even launch. So we might not even go green on it, but we're getting paid to do this part of the consultancy and make sure that this is going to work before we green light. And I think often too many accountants can go into it, try and sign them up and dive into it and have not properly tested it. So this bit, yeah, absolutely critical for that. So that's your approval bit. And then we've got, we can do two-stage approval. So it might be that everything gets done at a certain level from a regional manager, but actually a CFO, again, in this example, if it's over £10,000, there's an extra step and we can add layers and layers and layers of this. So, generally speaking, on approval front, I've seen 3 multiple times sometimes in terms of levels of approval. Don't often see more than that in terms of department heads and spend, but it's really important to get that set up first. And then we've got these 2 little cheeky steps that we can bring in beforehand. So there's a review step we can bring in. And this is where when someone creates a PO, before it goes to someone for like, is this okay? Can I go and spend this money? The review step is just to ensure that the thing is right, that the codes are in the right place. So the reviewer has the ability to edit it before it goes to approval. Where this works really well, for trainees, so if I've got a trainee that's doing purchase orders, and we do run purchase orders for some of our clients, particularly those that have got stock, I, truth be told, would not trust a trainee to just make that purchase order and send it in. So they will send it to the review, and then one of the qualified team will look over that to give it the okay before it goes to the internal team for approval. If you're in it in an industry, again, if I was using this, I'd have potentially the more junior member of staff preparing it before it goes to PO. The other great place to put a review step in is when you've got a new starter here in this PO section, you might have a temporary review step of someone more senior just for that first month, first 3 months, to make sure that what they are doing is right, because what can cause absolute chaos is someone who's new to the game, doesn't know all the rules, gets things wrong in the wrong place. It causes much more pain at the approval step to then start declining them and redoing them than it does to get them reviewed and right in the first place and then flowing through. So the review step, again, is probably one of the best kept secrets and most underestimated features in ApprovalMax. So trainees, new starters, and those people that are unsure, put a review step in. And then we have got an auto approval step. So there are some things, where if it hits this step, it's going to bypass further approval steps. And, the classic one, if the POs are a certain low value, or there's a particular department that's got more of a free rein on its spend. So we can put something in there. So I've got to call this cheap. And then any POs under £5 are going to go straight through. Because again, we're all busy people. We might need to raise POs at certain times, but not everything needs straight on approval. But by putting this auto approval step in, the reason we have this and we don't just say what we're bothering with purchase orders for, then at this level, is it gives us an audit trail of all that spend and where that's coming from, and lets us run reports then based on those orders. So I'd always say, it's not a bad thing to put this in and have auto approval rather than just not have anything at all, because this gives us an extra layer of control and visibility that wouldn't be there if we didn't have this auto approval step in. So that's the main flow. And then a crucial bit is this little setting bit here. So then beyond that, there's loads of little gems in here that we need to carefully think about. And again, I think I see loads of times from our perspective, if this just gets skipped, we just go, yeah, leave it, and it's done. Or it's done once when we start, and then we never look at it again. And the reality is that businesses evolve, and we need to do this bit should not be a one-shot thing. Generally, you will start to unshackle some of these controls when things start working properly. So there are some automations we can turn on that would say don't turn on straight away. Like, let's get things working, and then we can start turning some of these things off. So again, we've got, what it does. If it detects something in Xero that hasn't gone through the approval work process, do we pull it into ApprovalMax, or should we pull it in? So those are big things to think about. And then dates wise, if it is pulled in, but there are locks on things, and dates wise, well, what date should we be bringing this into? So these are great controls. And then the crucial one, if changes get made in Xero after ApprovalMax, like, when are we flagging that, and what values are we bothered about? So we might not care if a tracking category changed, but we might care if the account's moved. Or, this one, if a contact's been changed, the alarm bells will be ringing for why that's changed after it's been approved. There's no reason for the contact to change. And again, I'm not going to go through all these in the time that we've got, but these are some really, really important things to think about on how things will work through. And then the other one, again, I'll touch on it a little bit more later, is the matching purchase orders to bills can be done automatically. Like, that can absolutely streamline your processes, knowing that a bill is being matched to purchase orders and the machine is doing it. But again, err on the side of caution. I would always say leave that off to start with, get the process working, make sure the people in the right place, and then that gets switched on when life is good and we're happy that things are working. That can be really, really powerful. And then again, we've got things like emails enabled and templates, etc. And again, I'm not going to run through each and every one of these, but I just want to stress that if you're setting up ApprovalMax and you're new to this, like this page and that settings page, this is your Bible. Like, this bit has to be right early doors. And then the discard changes. And then finally, just on the next major one is then the bill work through. So again, it can pull from things like Dex in there, Dex Prepare, which lives here. I'm just going to refresh that so it doesn't hopefully log me out because I've been sat. What does that? So this is when the bill comes in then, how are we approving the bills? And it's a very similar process. You generally find this might have less steps, to be perfectly honest, once the PO has gone through for the bill matching period. But again, we can do that and match that for particular areas. And again, another place to look, these settings. We've got the email address there to email bills in directly. Lock dates, what if things are sent dated earlier than we've locked a period down? What should we do with that? How do we treat it? And again, a variety of fraud detections on the bills again and in there. So these sections that can't be taken too lightly at all. So when we're starting, we're nailing those processes. And then again, we've got lots of other processes there around journals, contacts, flows. And again, I'm not going to sit with the time I've got and go into any more detail on those. The one thing I'm going to mention on last one of this is you can build standalone workflows, so your own custom workflows. So we build these for just random things that are outside the scope that the client might never ever see. But like we could track like scorecard values, for example. So every Friday we track like email inboxes to make sure, like if you're managing an email box for this person, you could have a workflow that checks that at the end of each week, how many invoices are still sat in that inbox and track that. So there's loads of really cool things outside of the world of approvals that standalone workflow can do, which again, I'll touch on if I get time a bit later. Okay, so that's my settings. What does that look like in terms of how things run? So if I actually just go to, let's just create a new request at the moment. So I can do a new purchase order and create the request. This is what it looks like. And then this looks a lot like Xero and QuickBooks for, we pick our supplier. And again, if I've got rules on, I can't add new suppliers like direct from here. So we've got control on who that is. We pick our supplier, we pop our details in, reference. We've got our branding themes from Xero in this instance. We can put notes on if we want to. And then again, we just pop our details in here for what our order is going to look like. And again, same from Xero, we can assign it if we want to properties. And then we can submit that for approval. That's our purchase order in. I'm going to go to the perspective of a reviewer now. So I'm just going to refresh that just so we can see what that looks like. So this is from the prospect of someone then that is reviewing it. So I've just popped that in. So this hasn't gone for approval yet, but it gives me the opportunity to make edits and changes to this if something is wrong or we know that needs changing. If we're happy with it, we can submit it for approval. That's now gone to the PO approval. And again, I'm going to dive then onto Dave. I wish I'd have used better names for this, Mr. Approver and Mr. Reviewer, but never mind. And then we get into the purchase orders that require my decision. And there we can see it's there for me to approve or reject accordingly with that. So that's how that works. Then that's approved, and then that's onto our purchase list. But we can see nicely here of the bits that require my decision, the things that I've got to do. So that's my purchase order. When it comes to creating bills, it's got a beautiful Dex integration. So it works really nice with that one. So I've got my Dex here. So Dex works, this is my virtual in tray. These are my bills that have come in. There's my Dex bill, indeed. That's a real payment that unfortunately I have to make, but there you go. Let me just pop that to advertising and marketing. And I hit publish, and these then make their way in to ApprovalMax. Instead of going straight into Xero, we're adding that extra line to say, hang on, like, we want to approve these, whether that's approving them to go on to the ledger for payment, or we want to match them against POs is obviously the most common method for doing that. So what happens when a bill comes in? There is our bill with our receipt bank. There we can see it's there. It's pulled the details in, same as receipt bank does normally, but we've got this match with PO details, and here we've got nothing at the moment that matches that value on that bill. Yeah, I'll come back to that. I'll come back. There's a budget bit I want to show you, but I'll show you that in a second. If we've got anything from Real 5, we can match that accordingly. I've got one here with a match. So in this instance here, we want to match that to the PO. And here we have got a purchase order in, but the purchase order is for £100. And obviously this is just 50. So we can part pay that 50 against that one. So we know we still have 50 to pop against it. So we can do all the sophisticated things of part paid or over amount that's come in. So now we know that invoice is allocated, but we've still got £50 left on that purchase order. It's as simple as that to match and work through. So that's kind of how the very basic request matching works. It's probably worth mentioning at this stage. So we've got, this is Dex, which again pulls through, connects, great. ApprovalMax has launched an OCR capture system itself. So if I want to create a bill, I could do it manually, like actually type it up and make it. But we've got this ApprovalMax capture now with bulk upload. So I can then actually bring files in directly and can kind of completely miss Dext altogether. Don't need that anymore. We find this is working really well. If you've got a Sin 7 plugged in for the stock management, because that's managing the stock invoices, but you've got other invoices, like your accountancy fees, stationery spend, that kind of stuff, advertising spend. This works really well then to handle all of those things and removes the need for having Dext in there at all. That you can email them in, or indeed in this instance, we're going to upload, and I can upload a document here. So got a real 5 invoice again and upload. Wrong button. Upload that, and then it will go and it will read the data. There we go. In it goes. Reads the data, reads the amount. Life is sweet in there. And then I can make any edits. We can allocate it to a particular nominal code, an account, and then it's in, and then it's on, and it's ready for approval. So it's really quick, that really, really sweet the way it pulls that data off. And particularly if you're using a stock system integration and you just want to manage the remaining invoices, it's working really, really well for our clients. So that is the kind of basic matching principle of purchase orders and bills and what that looks like. From an outsourced finance function, like we do 2 tiers. So there are some clients where we actually manage the purchase ordering of those things, where we know stock reorder levels, particularly around that kind of spend, and we can create them. For a lot of clients, they will create the purchase order element of it. They will approve that internally. And our job then is to, when the bill comes in, to make sure that the bill matches and that we match those POs off. And again, I mentioned construction companies earlier, like that makes life so much easier when these are running through and matching, because you wouldn't believe the amount of times that things don't match, that goods aren't the right amount. The other thing that's worth mentioning at this point on the bills is if you run inventory on your bills and the unit price in Xero, if the unit price of that in Xero is £30, and this is £32.99, it will flag that is different to the inventory price that's in your software. With price checking, it's called, which again is really, really, for an accountant, it's really, really cool, because I'm not going to check every single one backwards and forwards. I'll be there all week. But I can then be a proper outsourced finance function and raise the fact that actually values have changed. And again, you would be amazed again at the restaurant trades one, where that happens quite a lot, where the price of a tomato today will be different to the price of a tomato tomorrow. And flagging that has moved is really, really powerful. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I was kind of manually looking at purchase orders, looking at invoices, and not having that for context. So that's how that works as well. Now, I want to talk a little bit about budgets, because budgets are absolutely belting. And for an accountant, a great way of ApprovalMax in many ways becomes the gateway to selling cash flow services and budgeting services. And I kind of didn't clock that when I first started using this, of how it's not just approval processes. We're talking about financial control and management, and bringing the budgets in is absolutely huge and a fantastic way of doing that. So we can upload budgets. We can upload them like from files, which is fine and dandy. But my preferred way is to sync with the software. So Xero has got its own budget in there. So you've got within your reports, you've got your budget manager. Hopefully Xero hasn't logged me out for my inactivity. Give it a minute. So within here, we've got our budget manager, for those that don't know. This is where we can upload a budget, and ultimately we can export that from Excel. I wouldn't bother typing the numbers in here. Export that to Excel, update our budget, import it back into Xero. That gives us a Xero budget, and then we can literally connect it to here. The other fantastic thing is we can have more than one budget. So if we've got an overall budget, but we've got budgets for each property, for example, of how much we want to spend on each property development, we can pull in separate budgets for each property, which is just really, really, really fantastic for monitoring spend and what that looks like. So that becomes, by default, they're then deactive, and we just need to, when they're imported, when we sync them, we just need to make them active, and that then sets it up and it's live and it's ready to run, ready to rock and roll. What does that mean in real terms? Well, here we go. So we've now got a purchase order in for Reel 5 to advertising and marketing, but the budget is £3,000 a month for advertising and marketing. So I can still approve it if I want to, but this is flagging here that the overall budget, this little red mark means this spend, that is going to take you over your budget for this month. So again, I might want to think about approving that. And again, for me, what's beautiful as an accountant doing this bit and seeing these bills come in is I can get on top of that almost on the client's behalf and say, well, hang on a minute, like we're out of budget. How often as an accountant are you working behind and backwards and you report a P&L and a budget and you go, oh yeah, you were over budget, but you can't do anything about it. Like it's already gone, it's been passed. This is a great opportunity for us as accountants to get really invested in a client's budget and make it more than an Excel spreadsheet that we do once a year. And then we go, oh, we're under budget and over budget. Now, like, let's get proper controls in place and let's get really embedded as a finance function and be taking some responsibility for managing these numbers. And this is a great way of doing it for me. So in this instance, yeah, we've got the status to say, hang on, we're going to be over budget with this one. This one, audit and accounting fees, because we've got some great audit and accountants. They're actually cheaper than we expected. So with this bill, we are under budget. So the green tick is saying, life is sweet. We are under budget. We are okay. And then I do have another one somewhere. Here we go. This one, we've got yellow. Yellow means that, okay, right now we're not over budget, but we have got a stack of things stacked in approval, waiting for approval. That means if they all get approved, this is going to take us over budget. There is a danger this will run over budget. So I just love those little traffic lights and how that works. So again, potentially, I think the most underutilized feature in ApprovalMax, because most accountants and even those running businesses don't spend enough time doing budgets, doing forecasting and doing cash flow forecasting. And this for me is your linchpin to make that magic happen. And even if it's just a first volley to start with, encourage them to get something into that zero or on that Excel spreadsheet, and we can at least start to look at where those things are. And again, it might not even be a full budget on anything, but you might start with saying, look, where are your key items that you were spending your money on? You know, you might not care about, 50 quid a month on insurance. Yeah, we don't need a budget for that. But on the major spend, let's dice that up and let's work out what that needs to be. It also means we can give particular budget holders their own budgets and spend control. So if I bring a marketing budget in just for that user, like they have got their own spend and aware of what they've got left in the kitty. So really, really, really powerful. That's the budgeting side of things. And again, you can see, we've got full workflow of what that looks like and how things have been submitted and edited and worked through. So that just works fantastically well there. If I go back to my other log on, as that's got some of my other bits and pieces. Other controls worth mentioning. So yeah, contacts is another one where we can control how we add contacts to things and add them and whether they get approved or not. More straightforward, but again, if we want, certainly the large companies that I work with all have like approved supplier lists, particularly for key spends. So the huge construction companies, there's no way they're going to a random spend and signing off kind of 6-figure values. So using contacts in here and controlling that, again, is a great way of making sure that we've got approved supplier lists. So that's kind of what I use that for. Manual journals, absolutely worth a little shout out. So this is best from an accounting perspective, or indeed industry. If you have got a trainee wanting to do something and update a journal, have you ever been in a situation where a trainee has gone straight into the zero, they've updated it and you've gone, oh my God, that journal is the wrong way round. The client is going to think we are imbeciles. We have made their numbers look stupid, or we have double counted a wages journal. Like the chaos that a trainee can cause by going directly into the software and making adjustments, like gives me cold sweats. Like literally I've had some very painful moments from journals going the wrong way or the wrong place. And clients are using this data real time. So what this does is it gives us control that the journal isn't going to go into zero or indeed the software until it's been approved. And this is a great training ground for me they pop the journals in here and then that gets sent to me to say, okay, yeah, this is the right way round or this is the wrong way round. And again, we can put multiple tiering on this. So I would have generally, again, multiple tierings on those kind of things for different values of journals. You can go to different people. So we can have different trainees approving journals from different people. Really, really powerful. Really, really useful. Also, if they get it wrong, right, how are we tracking staff performance? Are they understanding what they are doing? By doing it through here, if it's wrong, it can get rejected. We can keep track of that. We can run reports of how many journals are you running a month as a trainee, how many are getting rejected as a percentage. And you would hope that as months went on, that would drop and reduce. So even from a training perspective, the reporting that we can do in here is really, really, really cool to kind of quantify, is that person understanding things and getting better? So that's that bit. And then on the report side of things, so there are two types of reports. There are general request reports, then line item detailed reports. So all types of weird and wonderful things. But again, you can look at what's been approved this month, purchase orders for this month. Fraud detection is a great one. So that's where we're saying if things are being changed or pulled from zero, what's getting changed and why and who is it. And we can also do accruals is a crucial one for how many purchase orders have gone in that haven't got a bill attached to them yet, but the goods have been received. We should be accruing for that. That could be an absolute nightmare to work out manually. And indeed, not just for construction companies, there's even things like, marketing agencies where they've done work or paid for things and it's being spread over a period where we can use ApprovalMax to manage things like that. So we can do them broad brush. So I can do, if I look at this accruals report. So this is picking up purchase orders that are approved, but there's not a bill attached to them. So here we've got 2. So again, I could use that to create a journal there. But the line item report actually takes it one further and pulls out every single line item that matches your criteria. So again, in this example, I've gone bills that haven't been matched in their entirety. So all these POs here, these have been approved and these are on approval, but they haven't got bills to them. And then what I can do with these is I've got a create journal button there. And what is really, really cool is I can then actually make the journal from here in all its glory. Oops. Monthly. What we're in now? We're not in December, are we? November journal. Almost Christmas. There we go. And then we've got a draft journal that is created. So super, super powerful. Again, look, there are some firms that are small that do one journal, one accrual, it's one accountancy invoice potentially. But for some companies, these accruals are kind of like 6 figures a month. They can make or break a set of management accounts. And again, if we wanted to sell management accounts, do that as another service. This is the dream boat. This is great for selling that service. Oh, we want your gross profit to be in the right place. If you're spending 6 figures on stock that's been received but hasn't been invoiced, like your figures on a monthly basis could be out by a huge amount. I've worked with particularly construction companies where the gross profit one month is 70%, the month after it's 20%, and it's because the timing of invoices is all over the place. This fixes that. And again, even to potential properties or tracking categories, it's all matched there beautifully. So that is how the reporting works. Again, I could talk for an hour on the reporting alone, like really, really, really cool in what that can do. You can make payments through ApprovalMax. Now, I'm not going to cover that in detail today, truth be told, because I've not used that in detail myself. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert of something I've not used massively. But that we're working through with some clients now that are coming on board with us. That's it being very much beta tested with us. So for the next webinar, I plan to go into detail of the payment process and the entire workflow from bill acceptance to payment. So it can do that. Other things just worth mentioning is it's got Slack integration and email integration. So approvals, you don't need to log in directly to the web address for ApprovalMax to approve things. And again, if you're on site, you're out and about, making approvals on the mobile phone via integrations is really, really useful and very, very quick. Another thing worth mentioning, again, bottlenecks. Bottlenecks cause pain, yeah? This out of office is beautiful. This out of office makes it that we can make substitutes. So I might be off for a week, but the company can't stop. The company's still got to approve things. They've got to bill things out. So who is it that's going to cover my role and for what period? So while I'm away, you know what day is going to cover for a week, 2 weeks? the machine can keep moving while I'm away. So again, it's a really, really smart and underused feature in ApprovalMax that we don't want people to come back from holiday and have minor breakdowns that there are 400 things to approve. That just gets rid of that completely. So that's that bit in a nutshell for you there. One thing to mention on the settings through the workflows is you can choose whether you get emailed every time one of these things comes in or summary emails. As a rule, I would recommend, by default, it's set to email every time. That can absolutely drive people bonkers. So I would generally recommend that you tweak that and set that to a regular reminder of what's in the in tray, as opposed to every single one that comes through. Or you can, if you've got lots, it can potentially clog your in tray. So again, that's one thing to bear in mind. And lastly, on the workflows, yeah, you can make new workflows that are whatever you want them to be. So in this new workflow, here we just asked to type something in, put a value in description. But you can use this for all types of things. Just even if you've completed stages in management accounts that you're ready for someone else to review them and sign them off, you can submit that for approval to say things are done. You can use them for scorecards. So like I said earlier, this workflow would actually be like although this is an amount here, we would use it just for an amount of email items in your email that aren't read yet or aren't actioned at the end of every week, and then send that over. And that then fills the scorecard in, and we can get reports on that through ApprovalMax. Again, massively underutilized feature for ApprovalMax, the actual standalone workflows that we can use. So I know I talk really fast, get really excited, but that is very much a whistle-stop tour of ApprovalMax and what it can do and how it works. So I'm just going to stop the share, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the hurdles and problems that can come in when it comes to it. So the first thing to know is to get the team on board, and whether that is your internal accounting team from an accounting perspective or the people that are going to use it. Where this fails or causes the most problems are when maybe there are 10 people that need to be in the approval process and none of them get told until it launches, oh, by the way, we're moving to ApprovalMax, and from next Friday, you're all going to be using the approval. That makes life way more difficult. So again, there's a consulting process of you are understanding people's needs, and we need to sell the benefits and sell the why, as Simon Sinek would say, of why this is useful to each and every one of those people that will be using it, because we don't want it to be seen as a threat or a pain point. And when I used to go wrong with this, when I started implementing it, was I would speak to the business owner or the person that wanted to bring it in, but I wouldn't be speaking to any of the other people directly in that approval step. And what often happens is you then go and speak to them and they go, oh, no, that's not how I do it. No. Dave doesn't know about that bit. That's not what happens in this instance. And before you know it, you can open a can of worms when it's a bit too late. So getting everybody from top level to the very bottom involved early doors is really important to get people on board and make sure you've got your process mapped. When it's rocking, you don't set it up hurdle-wise and walk away and it's done. It's very, very rare that version 1 is the version to rule them all. What often happens is things get tweaked on amounts where I would often say amounts maybe start too low, and that's good. Start the approval process a little bit lower than maybe you normally would to make sure we're capturing things properly. And what tends to happen is we start to see those limits increase, certainly at the top end of people doing less of approving at the top end. But that evolves over time. The other hurdle is just run reports, be running reports all the time, particularly for week on week for those first 3 months, to make sure that people are following the system, because habits are really important to form. So it might be all right, someone does it for the first 2 weeks, but then they actually start diving into zero and trying to skip processes. That's not okay. So we want to make sure they're following it. And the best way to do that is run reports on a regular basis and get on top of it. Finally, another hurdle there is getting automatic too soon. So I said about those auto approvals, for example. They are great, and you want them flowing when it's rocking 100%, because it can also auto match, like I say, purchase orders to bills. And I would absolutely encourage that when it's ticking. You want as many bills being auto approved to purchase orders. Like, the machines get it right. but you want to make sure that your process is right before you do that. Otherwise, you'll have a load of bills matched to purchase orders that are not the way it should be. So yeah, make sure we don't turn on everything automatic from day one. In the same way with Xero, you wouldn't just set up everything to automate freight from day one. You would want to make sure that the processes are actually right. So that's how that one works. And then just a hurdle from an accounting perspective on a selling this as a new service, whether this is a consultation or an outsourced finance function for the first time. Just remember, things get worse before they get better. With any implementation, there is a new learning phase. So for the first 4 to 6 weeks, generally, things are worse and things are harder before they get better. And if this is your first ApprovalMax implementation as an accountant and you're trying to sell this service, or your first outsourced finance function, the chances are you will lose money on it short term for that first month or 3. You will undervalue it, you will underprice it. But that's okay. That is a training experience and that's not unusual. And too many accountants dip the toe in the water with a new service, go, it's not made me any money, or it's not had an instant return, I'm going to leave it. If I would have done that, I wouldn't be selling half of the apps and ecosystems and consulting that I do now. So bear in mind that you will probably underprice when you first start, and you will not, you haven't got documents for the processes. So again, to defeat that hurdle, as you do anything new for the first time, document it. And we love using Loom videos, free software tool. Get a Loom video, record what you're doing and why you're doing it, so that the next time someone has that, oh, how do I set up this workflow? Well, there's a video for that. And you speed up your own process as you go along. So videos for the first time you do absolutely everything is a great way to get over that kind of pain point. So that pretty much wraps up those common hurdles. So I don't know if anyone has got any questions just to wrap up for the final. Oh, sorry, yeah, we've got, if anyone is interested in learning ApprovalMax, sorry, there's a poll in there, missed out. So we're going to hit with a poll now. Just if anyone is interested in knowing more. And I am more than happy to get involved, help with that process in terms of mapping out what that looks like, how that can develop as a service in a bit more detail for you. I've got some videos and some more detailed thoughts than on the webinar in terms of what implementing it looks like and like what good looks like. And obviously with a bit more time, I can share that in a bit more detail on some of those notes as well. So that's that one. So yeah, so far so good. Poll wise, looks like lots of people are interested in ApprovalMax. And I don't put my name to anything. For those of you that know me, I'm reasonably well known in the LinkedIn space, on the accounting space. I don't put my name to anything I haven't used and don't believe in. So I get offered, as a side note, sometimes a ridiculous amount of money to put my name to something or sponsor something or be involved with something. And I never will if I don't believe in it or do it. And I genuinely say that ApprovalMax has made a real difference to outsourced finance functions and indeed large implementations. Cool. Okay, so that's that poll. And then yeah, last couple of minutes, if anyone has any questions, then feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll give it another 30 seconds, but if no one's got anything after that, we can wrap up the webinar. And like I say, the other thing on what I will mention is when it comes to setting up and getting done for the first time, what's really nice is there are training videos for each and every step of the way. So if you go into workflows, there is a how-to with 30 different steps on different elements of those workflows, with a brief description and a YouTube video, So there's a ton of stuff like that ApprovalMax have prepared on YouTube that makes it really useful, for you to learn as an accountant if you're an accountant doing it, but even just to send direct to your client on, this is how this works. There's a lot of material that's already there. Okay, well, that looks like it just about wraps up our webinar. So thank you everyone for your time, and we'll speak again soon.